Yes, it has started.
All right. So do you want? So will you be saying anything, Ambarish, or you want me to start?
Yes. No. Dr. Bhalerao will do that.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. We are here for the Shobhana Gokhale Memorial Lecture, which is conducted by Samvidya Institute of Cultural Studies. I would now request the Managing Director, Managing Trustee and Director, Dr. Ambarish Khare, to introduce the Institute.
Thank you. I welcome you all on this occasion. We have gathered here for this Dr. Shobhana Gokhale Memorial Lecture for the year 2022 to be delivered by Dr. Pankaj Tandon. Samvidya Institute of Cultural Studies is a public charitable trust established by the students and researchers of Sanskrit and Indology. Professor Shrikant Bahulkar, who is a well-known scholar of Vedic studies and Buddhist Tantrism, was instrumental in founding this institution. Since its inception, a number of activities such as publications of books, then arranging the lecture series, having seminars, workshops have been started by the institute. We have also had felicitation of senior scholars, and we have also offered research fellowships for conducting a small term research. One of the two annual lecture series started by the institute is Dr. Shobhana Gokhale Memorial Lecture, for which we have gathered here today. Dr. Shobhana Gokhale is a well-known name in the field of Indian epigraphy and numismatics. She was born in Bapat family on 26th February 1928 in Amaravati, Maharashtra. She was fortunate to have Dr. P.V. Bapat as her uncle and Professor V.V. Mirashi as her teacher. After her marriage with Mr. Lakshman Gokhale, she came to Pune and joined the Deccan College after that. She completed her PhD in archaeology under the guidance of Professor H.D. Sankalia. Her work in the field of Indian epigraphy and numismatics win her many laurels. Her special focus on the Satavahana dynasty brought her fame, but she also worked on the coins and inscriptions of the dynasties such as Kshatrapas, Traikutakas, Abhiras, and Rashtrakutas. Even after her retirement from the Deccan College, she was continuously engaged in research. She was doing research literally till her last breath. She passed away on 22nd June 2013. Her long-awaited project report on the inscriptions of Junnar has recently been published by the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. Samvidya Institute of Cultural Studies conferred the honorary fellowship before her sad demise on Dr. Shobhana Gokhale. With strong support from the family members, especially her doctor, Dr. Anjali Fadke, Samvidya Institute started the lecture series in her name in the year 2014. The first lecture was delivered by Dr. Vasundhara Filioza in 2014, and after that, many scholars like Professor Srinivas Ritti, Professor Y. Subbarayalu, Professor K.K. Thapliyal, Dr. D.K. Handa, Professor Gautam Sengupta, Dr. Shailendra Bhandare has delivered the lectures in this series, and we are very fortunate and very glad to have Dr. Pankaj Tandon to deliver the lecture in this series for the year 2022. I request Dr. Manjiri Bhalerao to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Dr. Ambarish Khare. I'm really glad to introduce today's speaker, who is Professor Pankaj Tandon. In fact, you will be surprised to know that he is an economist by profession. He is a faculty in the Boston University where he teaches economics. First, he did his PhD from Harvard University, and then he has started teaching in the Boston University. Today, he is there in the capacity of Professor of Economics. His research fields are numismatics, technological change, microeconomic theory, public enterprise, and economic development. So there are so many other things also in which he is doing his research and work. He has also published some books which are related to his own field of research, that is economics, a textbook of microeconomic theory, the welfare of consequences of selling public enterprises, and selling public enterprises, a cost benefit methodology. In fact, these are alien terms for us who are working in the field of ancient Indian history and culture. But for us, he has also worked a lot on the in the field of numismatics. We are really fortunate to have him because he has, and many of us, I am sure, are taking the help of the website that he has single-handedly constructed, named as Coin India, which is a very popular website among the researchers in numismatics and also the students of numismatics. More than 400 people visit this website every day. But then to know some of his publications in the field of numismatics, we have here like research on the Guptas and Iranian Huns, then women on South Asian coins. Some of the titles are really interesting. That are these the earliest Greek coins of Bactria? And then reattributing some more coins of Chandragupta II to Chandragupta III, and many more. I mean, I need not read all the biodata over here because his publications are available online. You can see the website of Boston University where the detailed biodata and publications are given. So I am very happy to have you over here, sir, along with the other members of Samvidya Institute of Cultural Studies. I now request Mrs. Dhanashri Shezwalkar to start with the Vandana.
या देवी सर्वभूतेषु बुद्धिरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः शुक्लां ब्रह्मविचारसार परमा आद्यां जगद्व्यापिनी वीणा पुस्तकधारिणीमभयदा जाड्यान्धकारापहा हस्ते स्फाटिकमालिकां विदधतीं पद्मासने संस्थिता वन्दे तां परमेश्वरीं भगवतीं बुद्धिप्रदां शारदा
Thank you, Dhanashri. Now, on behalf of the Institute and the participants, I would like to request Professor Tandon to start with his presentation. I would also like to request all the people who are present in the meeting to keep their video and mics on off mode. Thank you. Professor Tandon, you can start
Thank
sharing the
you.
screen, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bhalerao. Thank you, Dr. Khare, and to all the trustees for this very warm welcome. Boy, this guy sounded pretty good. He's done all kinds of stuff. Even I was impressed. But this is a really wonderful occasion. I really feel honored to have been invited to give this lecture when the list of former speakers was given by Dr. Khare, I was thinking, wow, I'm in pretty good company. So I really appreciate the honor for having been invited to give this lecture. And it's wonderful that I can do this sitting from my home in outside Boston, although to be honest, I'd much rather be in Pune with all of you to do this in person. But we have to go with what's available. So let me now share my screen, and I guess I'll share this one. So this, are you seeing it? Can somebody
Yes,
confirm?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. I think I should look at this one. Okay. So this talk is, I'm not going to be breaking a lot of new ground here. It's mostly, I'm treating it as a kind of a survey, partly because I am in the process of writing a survey of this coinage as part of the Beyond Borders project, which some of you may be familiar with. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to try to put that together in some way. So this is a sort of a survey, and it's an important survey from this point of view, that the Huns, did not leave a lot of material culture. They didn't build a lot of things. There are very few pieces of information we have directly, physical information of their presence in South Asia. The coins are the main thing. There are stray references in literature here and there. And that's, if you haven't seen this, this is there's a wonderful book that has come out from this Beyond Borders project called Hunnic Peoples in Central and South Asia, that has gathered together all the primary information on these on the Huns, and this is going to lead hopefully to much new research into the Huns. But as I said, the coins are the main piece of material culture we have, and so they tell us a lot that we might not otherwise know. In addition to my own work, I'll be drawing from various other sources. Goebel, of course, his 1967 4-volume survey of the coins of what he called the Iranian Huns is where the field, in a sense, starts. Joe Cribb has been very active, Matthias Fisserer, Klaus von der Weck. And then there was this wonderful exhibition in Vienna a few years ago. They had put out an exhibition catalog which surveyed some of this coinage. And then the Beyond Borders project that I've mentioned with Hans Backer has done some wonderful new work on the Huns, and I'll be touching on that. So if we go to the Huns, the traditional division of the Huns that, in a sense, Goebel started was into these 4 groupings. And this is really on the basis of very different styles of their coinage. So we call them the Kidarites, the Alkon or Alkan Huns, the Nezak, and the so-called true Hephthalites. And in this talk, I'll be focusing mostly on the first 2, the Kidarites and the Alkon, because they are the ones who most impacted what is now India. The Nezak and the Hephthalites were pretty much confined to what is now Afghanistan. So if we take a look at South Asia in the middle of the 4th century, we see that the northern Afghanistan, that is north of the Hindu Kush mountains, was dominated by the Kushano-Sasanians. Then the south of the Hindu Kush, including the Kabul Valley and probably entering into Gandhara, we had the Sasanians in control. the Kushan Empire had been reduced to a rather small area, probably in eastern Gandhara and maybe Punjab. And then, of course, we had the Guptas, who were the rising power, and they had in fact reached the borders of the Kushan. They had probably had some clashes with the Kushan by then. And they will also enter into our story. So these were the four major dynasties in northern India and this area. If we go sort of zoom out a little bit, we see that at that time in the Altai mountain range area, that is where today Mongolia, China, and Siberia all come together in that sort of corner. There was a tribe that we think of, there's a lot of confusion about what things were called and so on, but we call them the Xiongnu, and they may have been and I'm probably mispronouncing that anyway, but they're probably a confederation of different tribes. And these were actually the same people who had 300 years earlier driven the Kushans, the Yuezhi, out of this area. And then they had made their way into India and of course established a major empire. So the Xiongnu had driven the Yuezhi out of Central Asia. And we are now going to see them again, 300 years later, because there was a climate shock in the Altai region at around this time. Paleoclimatologists have discovered that there's a marked reduction in the pollen production in this period for an extended period of time, which suggests that there was a big reduction in the amount of vegetation in the area. Now, the Xiongnu were a pastoral nomadic people. They had herds of cattle or whatever they herded, and they would be in the plains in the summer, in the wintertime. They'd be up in the mountains in the summertime, and with the marked reduction in vegetation, obviously their herds had much less to eat, and so they apparently, we can sort of assume, or we can conclude, that this led them to move away from this area that was now much less hospitable for them, and to find a new place to be. And this set in motion a migration of the Xiongnu, we now call the Huns, into Central and South Asia. And then another branch went further west. And, some 50 years later, we find Attila fighting the Romans and reducing the Roman Empire. So this same climate shock drove the Huns some west and some southwest, and we'll be dealing primarily with the one, in fact, solely with the branch that came southwest. Interestingly, Attila never, and the western branch, if you like, of the Hunnic migration, they never issued any coins, as far as I know. So it's sort of remarkable that the people who moved into India did, in fact, issue coins, and we're grateful for that, because that's a big source of information from us. Of course, Attila we know a lot about because the Roman historians were recording a lot. Okay, so the first place, I'm going to go from the northwest to the southeast in sort of tracing what the Huns were doing. And so the first place we look at is northern Afghanistan, the area around Balkh, where the major mint probably was. And we see that at that time, the Kushanish Sasanians were ruling in that area. By the way, I wanted to say one thing, and that is, for those of you who are on the Zoom meeting and therefore have the ability to speak to me, if there's anything that you don't understand or you need a clarification, please don't hesitate to speak up. I'd much rather have a discussion than sort of drone on my own. And even if you have a substantive question, I invite you to actually raise it as I'm going along. I'd much rather solve things than leave you with misconceptions. So I invite a discussion to the extent that anybody is interested in that. So now coming back to the coin. So again, the coins are what tell us what's going on. The coin at the top left is the coin of the Kushano-Sasanian king, Vaharan, and that was what was being produced in bulk at the time. And the first Hunnic, and we think these are the Kidarites, these are the tribal group that came to be called the Kidarites. The first coin they introduced was basically a copy of this. Okay, it's still in the legend still names the Emperor Varan, but what's different is that they've changed the tamga. So if you look at the coin here, in the right field, there was a tamga, sort of a tribal identification. Actually, in the Kushano-Sasanian case, we call it a Nandipada. And they replaced that with this, what we now call the Kidarite tamga. And that's the only change they made initially. So we don't know who the ruler was who was issuing these. I've suggested 3 names because these were the names of people we know from their coins in Gandhara. So it could have been any one of these 3, or it could have been somebody else. But that was the first change that we see happening. And then we find a second change. So the tamga remains, but the second change is that the crown changes. So from the original crown, which the first issue had retained, we now have this ram's horn crown, which we later see associated with the Kidarite king Peroz. We're going to see some of the coins where we can identify that. So we think that these coins were issued by Peroz. And then finally, we have the coins of Kidara, where the crown changes to this one, where there's this central ornament surrounded by these ribbons floating upward. Everything else has remained the same. The Kidarite tamga is there. Oh, sorry, I should. You are seeing my cursor, I assume, yeah. So, and the legend is in the name of Varan. And the reason we know that this is Kidara is that finally there was an issue in which you have this ribboned crown, you have the Kidarite tamga, but now you have the legend changing to name Kidara, Lord Kidara, the Kushano-Sasanian king. So that's how we know that that this coin, that sequence sort of ended up in this way. And so Kidara now finally issues these dinars in bulk. And this has taken place over a period of several decades. And we see some signs that Kidara also had made his presence felt north of the Amu Darya River. So the boundary of Bactria was the Amu Darya River flowing from east to west from I forget what the name of the mountains are, but just north of the Pamirs, and then west to the Caspian Sea. That was the northern border of Bactria, but north of that was Sogdiana. And in Sogdiana, we have these coins around the year 400, which have a Sogdian legend that says Kidar. So we suspect these are coins of Kidara. And then there are these sealings that have been found either in several have been found that are all pretty much similar. Some have been found in Samarkand and some have been found in Swat Valley. So there was packages going back and forth, presumably, right? And they name a Lord Uglar, king of the Huns, great Kushansa, ruler of Samarkand. and we think this is Kidara again because of the crown with the ribbons. So there was obviously some Kidarite presence north of the Amudarya River. And there are some signs that there was more than that. So they obviously had expanded into that area. And I say expanded because I suspect that they didn't start there and then come to Bactria. They actually came to Bactria first and then expanded up, I think. And we're going to come to that. But then after Kidara, Joe Cribb has identified a series of additional kings. And I've mentioned three: Orolano, Pidocco, and Tobassini. Tobassini's gold coins are not yet appreciated. Joe has discovered them. They say Bogo Tobassini or Tobassino on them. So these are clearly Tobassini. We know this king from his silver coins. So there was a series of kings after Kidara. So probably the Kidarites, ruled until the middle of that century. Tobassini, as I said, also issued silver coins. And we think this must be around 450 because the crown he's showing has a wing, has a wing on it, which the Sasanian emperor Vahran IV, I believe it was, had introduced around 420 to 440, that period. So Tobassini must have been imitating those, and his coins must have been issued after that reign. We don't know where these coins were made, but at least one coin of Tobassini's has been found in Termez, just north of the Amudarya River. So one could speculate that these were made in Bactria. The Kushano-Sasanians did make silver coins of this Sasanian type with the very thin flan in Bactria. Some were perhaps made in Merv, some were perhaps made in Bactria. We don't know, unfortunately, but that raises the question of whether other Kidarite kings were issuing coins in Bactria. And for an example, there are these silver coins in the name of Vahran. And we have here the Brahmi letter P, and we have the ram's horn crowns. And again, we're going to see much more clearly that these belong to the king Peroz. But the coin is in the name of Vahran. And we have these coins that we should assign to Kidara because of the ribboned crown. And again, the legend is in the name of Vahran. Normally, these coins are assigned to Gandhara. And I asked the question, why would coins minted in Gandhara be in the name of Vahran? So I think we should at least consider the possibility that these were made in Bactria. But again, we really don't know. So the Kidarites arrive in Bactria in bulk around 350, and they last for a period of just over 100 years, because in the year 467, and we know this from literary sources, the Sasanian emperor Peroz I, and it's confusing that there's a Peroz, Sasanian Peroz, and Peroz I think means victor. If somebody speaks Pahlavi, maybe they can tell me, but I think it somehow involves victory and so on. So it's a reasonably common kind of name. He seized bulk in 467 and issued coins on this pattern in bulk. So the Kidarite rule lasted there just over 100 years, maybe 115 years or so. Now there are some more gold coins sort of on this pattern, but with a very different style. that we think are the issues of the Alcon Huns. Some are anonymous, some name the king Mehama, and some name the king Adomano. And where exactly these were minted is not known. They do follow the bulk sort of pattern. So that's the, sort of the first thing we might think. But on the other hand, we don't have any evidence that they were in fact in control in Bactria. In fact, we know that Perose fought with a branch of the Huns that we later came to call the Hephthalites. So he defeated the Kidarites. He seemed to have eliminated them from Bactria. And then he fought with the Hephthalites, and they kind of went back and forth. The Hephthalites defeated him. They actually captured him. He was forced to pay a ransom of the order of 1,500 kilograms of silver to the Hephthalites. But then he tried to fight them again because they were holding his son as hostage. And in that final war, he was killed, the Sasanian Emperor Perose. And the Hephthalites established their rule then in Bactria and started issuing their own coins. They started by taking coins of Perose. This is actually a Sasanian coin of Perose, the Sasanian Emperor Perose, with Hun countermarks. And then they started issuing their own imitations of the coins of Perose, but now with the mint, oops, I should be doing this here, with the mint name Gokhale for bulk. And this issue lasted a long time. And then there are these enigmatic issues in which you have this prince, we call him the Hephthalites prince, with a drinking goblet, and a Bactrian legend that says Ebadolo, which we think is a form of the word Hephthalite. So the Hephthalites were ruling in bulk. So those gold coins of Mehama and Adomano, it's unlikely they were issued in bulk, but I want to leave open the possibility that they were minted in Eastern Bactria, or then south of the Hindu Kush somewhere. Again, we don't know. Okay, so wait, no, what's happening? So now we're going to move southeast to the Kabul Valley. So we've talked about the area up here, north of the Hindu Kush, in the area around Balkh, and we'll now move southeast to the Kabul Valley, which, interestingly enough, came under the control not of the Kidarites, but so the Sasanians were in control there, but we have the Alcon Huns coming in there late in the 4th century. And in fact, they first took coins of Shapur II and used the same dyes, but modified them by adding their tamgas. And then they started issuing their own coins. And these, I've enlarged the tamgas so you can see them. There are two types of tamgas. There's this one, which I think some people call the Samarkand tamga. And then there's this one that I like to call the lunar. Some people call it the bullhorn tamga. So you have these two types of tamgas, which probably represent two different tribal groups within the Alcon banner. These tamgas, by the way, we don't know exactly what they were, but they may well have been cattle brands. That, you if it's your tribe, you brand your cattle with your own mark. I mean, people do that even to this day. And so different tribal groups would have their own tamga, and as I said, it could have been a cattle brand. So the early Alcon, they issued coins first that looked just like those of Shapur II, and then they started modifying them to introduce their own portraits. And what's distinguished about their portraits is that they have these elongated heads because they practiced what was called head binding. They thought it was auspicious to have elongated heads, which is interesting because the Egyptians used to do that too. So I have an elongated head. I've always thought that makes me very clever or something. But so they started introducing their own portraits with their elongated heads. But how long they issued coins in the Kabul Valley and how they seem to have started issuing them in Gandhara, sort of across the southern ranges of the Hindu Kush, quite soon thereafter. So they may have been issuing coins mostly in Gandhara. And I just want to mention in passing that late in the 5th century, southern Afghanistan passed under the control of the Nezak Shahs. This is a typical Nezak coin, and I'm not going to be saying too much about them because they don't impact India really at all. Okay, so as I mentioned, I think the Kidarites arrived in Bactria not from the north, and I've read that, you know, there was no sign of any disturbance in Sogdiana around 350 as the Kidarites are quote unquote passing through. And so it was almost as if they hadn't been there or that they went through peacefully. I think there's another alternative, and that is that the Huns may not have come to Bactria from the north at all. If you look at a map of the Silk routes, you see that there was not a well-developed Silk route, at least to the extent that this map is accurate. Rather, the routes from the east and from the northeast came sort of east to west. And so and in fact, a century later, Song Yun, and this is the work of Kuwayama, he has tried to trace the route taken by the Chinese emissary Song Yun, who had been sent to India to get Buddhist texts by the Chinese emperor. And according to Kuwayama's reconstruction, he came through Kashgar, through the Wakhan corridor, and then into Bactria. And then to go to India, he did not cross the lower range, the Hindu Kush, and go through the Khyber Pass. He went back east and then came through the mountain passes through Chitral and into the Swat Valley. Oops, sorry. So he came in through the Wakhan corridor, which is that strip of Afghanistan between the old Soviet Union and India, and came into Bactria, and then back and then down through Chitral into Gandhara. And this may well have been the way in which the Kidarites came. And this might explain also why the Kidarites issued coins in Bactria and almost simultaneously in Gandhara, but not in the Kabul Valley. They didn't, so they bypassed the Kabul Valley, and this would account for that. It means that they were familiar with these routes, and there was a sort of a contiguous nature of the land in eastern Bactria, and then the routes down through what are very high mountains, but into the Swat Valley and into Gandhara. And so it may well be that that's the route that the Kidarites took, because we see that if we now turn to Gandhara, Punjab, we see that they issued coins more or less around the same time as they were issuing coins in Bactria. They started issuing coins in Gandhara. We have the last Kushan king Kipunada issuing coins at that time, and he is replaced, probably the first Kidarite king to issue coins there was this fellow Hanaka. And what's interesting about his coins is that he names himself Shahi Hanaka, which suggests to me that in fact they did first go to Bactria, because the word Shahi they would have picked up there, because the word Shahi was not used so much on the Kushan coinage. Very early in the Kushan period, they would use the word Kushana, what is it? Now I'm blanking on the on the typical Kushan legend, but Shano Shao, Shano Shao, Shahanshah, basically. But that had sort of disappeared. Those circular legends where the king would call himself Shahanshah, Shano Shao, had disappeared by this time. And the names were now written in vertical form. Like here, for example, we see Kipunadha written vertically in Brahmi letters. And then we have here Bhadra. And we don't know actually what this Bhadra means. But that's the way the word Shahi had disappeared. And here he writes himself as Shahi Hanaka, which tells me that they had been in Bactria first. Soon after, we see a king Yasada, and then we see a king Kirada, and then we see Piroz, probably the same Piroz, written vertically, Piroz, and then finally we see Kidara. So again, we have the same sequence of names. We had Kirada. Well, we hadn't seen the name Kirada in Bactria. We had seen these two names, Peroz and Kidara. We see these names here as well. And then the Kidara coins were followed by a long series of imitations where the name remains as Kidara, but the style degrades. I want to point out one interesting thing about this Kidara coin, and that is that on the reverse, you have the letters Allah. We don't know what that means, Allah, but it's tempting to connect that to the word alaka. And we're going to come to that again in a minute or two. So these were, the Kushan style coins that they were issuing. And then there are these silver coins. We have silver coins of Piroz. We have silver coins of Kidara. He calls himself Kidara Kushan Shah. So again, that suggests, and Piroz's coins are in Pahlavi. So I don't know, that maybe they were in Bactria first. We have these 3/4 front facing. And here, by the way, we have Shahi Piro with the ram's horn crown. So that's why we know. And here we have Piroz in Pahlavi. So that's why with the ram's horn crown. So that's why we know that the ram's horn crown belonged to Piroz. And then we see the Kidara coins with these ribbons. And it says Kidara Kushan Shah in Brahmi letters. And then here on the reverse, we see Alaka. So on the gold coins, we saw Allah, and here we see Alaka. It's tempting to think that this refers to the Alkhon, Alaka. And so that raises the question of whether the Kidarites and the Alkhon were the same tribe. You have Kidara Kushan Shah, he's saying he's Alaka, or he's saying Alaka. This is a picture of the famous Swat Bowl, which is at the British Museum. And this has, let me go back for a second, it has the images of 4 rulers on horseback hunting. And if we look at the details of their face, of their heads, you can see that you have at least one who has the elongated head shape of the Alkhon, and then you have at least these 2 who have crowns that look like Kidarite crowns. And so They may not have been the same tribe, but they seem to be friends. They seem to have been allies at a minimum. And that would account for, we don't see any Kidarite coins being overstruck by the Alcon. We see this very smooth transition from Kidarite coins to Alcon coins in Gandhara. So it's probably that they were very closely allied and friendly with one another. After Kidara, we have a few more kings, like here we have Varo. It's sort of not very easy to see, but we have the Brahmi name Varo here. We have this king whose legend says Buddhami, probably Buddhamitra. And then we have kings who are unidentified. So we have these Kidarite issues going on for a little period of time, but then eventually they fade away and are replaced by the Alcon. We also have what Cribb calls the so-called sub-Kidarite series, maybe in Taxila, of these coins that sort of imitate the gold coins of Kidara, but now put the name on, so they still say Kidara on the, oops, I should be doing it here, Kidara on the front, but they put the name of the king on the back. And so we have here a Sri Vishwama, we have here a Sri Kritavirya, a Sri Kupuma, and a Sri Salonavirya. So we have these kings who have the word, oops, sorry. Can I just do this? No, that's not doing it. They still have the name Kidara on them, but then you have their names. Are these Kidarite? That's why Cribb calls them the sub-Kidarite series. Whether these were Kidarites or descendants, they were certainly doing the same kind of coinage. So that suggests to me that they may well have been descendants. And then we have the what I'm calling the Hill series. And I'll tell you in a minute why I'm calling it the Hill series. But we have these coins that say Sri Shahi on the front. They have a much larger flan. They have a very distinctive kind of fabric. And then you have the coins of what I think must be of Toramana that say Sri Prakash. Sri Prakasha. They say Kidara and then Sri Prakasha. And okay, so why am I calling them the Hill series? The reason is that that Hun coppers have been found in Manaswal in the Punjab hills. So you have coins of Prakashaditya and Wazara, Wazira. Drams of them are known from Gandhara. The coppers are known from the hills. And this all relates to Backer's recent discovery of Toramana's capital, which I think is one of the really interesting new pieces of information that have come out. He's discovered, I think very convincingly, that Toramana's capital was in the region of Akhnur. And the reason he found this was that he found a verse in a Jain text called the Kuvalaya Mala that says, on the banks of the Chandrabhaya river is the famous Pavaya, decorated with precious stones, where the illustrious King Tora resided while ruling the earth. And he's then found other sources to, first of all, the Chandrabhaga river is the Chenab, and he has found other sources that put this place Pavaya or Parvata somewhere between Jammu and Kulu. And so putting all things together, he identified the area around Akhnur. And in particular, there's a place called Pambarwan in that area where some excavations have been conducted and where at least one coin of Toramana was found. So there's a definite Hun presence there. If we go back let me just, no, so let me go back for a second to that map I had drawn. So if you look at Akhnur, this area, it's on the Chenab River. By the way, one of the pieces of information he found was that when Xuanzang, the Chinese pilgrim, came to India, he talked about the place Sagala, Sialkot, which was Mihirukula's capital. And then he mentioned that Mihirukula's the real capital, where Mihirukula's father had reigned, was somewhere to the northeast. And he had said 15 li, which is the Chinese measure of distance. So the distance isn't quite correct, but maybe he had underestimated. But certainly northeast of Sialkot is this site in Akhnur. So here's Manaswal, where those coppers were found. Here's Kura or Khwera, where an inscription of Toramana has been found. And here's Talgan, which is where the Shoyan inscription, which named Toramana among others, was probably created. So all of these places that are associated with Toramana are in the near vicinity of this place in Akhnur. So I think it's very convincing that this is where Toramana's capital was. And if that was his capital, and now I'm just thinking out aloud, basically speculating. If that was his capital, then why would a king be in the mountains? It suggests to me that he had probably withdrawn from, or his father, or whoever, they had withdrawn from a place that had become inhospitable in the plains. And so let me put my, let me put it out there. What if Toramana was a Kidderite? If the Alkhon have displaced the Kidderites in Gandhara, the Kidderites are withdrawing. There's this sub-Kidderite series, maybe in Taxila, and then an even further sub-Kidderite series, if you like, in the hills. The hills tend to be the place where people withdraw when things have become too hot for them in the plain, and both literally and metaphorically, right? So I think there's a decent argument to be made that that could be what's happening. And then, well, let me go back, and I'm going to show you this thing again, but let me just go back to this coin of what I assume is Toramana, because it says Shri Prakash. It also says Kidara on it. So that would suggest that there's some connection, whether it's inspirational or actual, some kind of bloodline. I don't know, but that's the thought. Anyway, now we'll come to the coins of the Alkhon in Gandhara. By the way, Gobel thought Toramana was an Alkhon, and people have always thought of Toramana in that way, but Gobel thought that Toramana was Kingila's son, and that we know is not true. Now we're 100% sure that that's not true. Why are we not sure? Because we've seen the Shoyan inscription where both of those kings are named, Kingila and Toramana, but no relationship between them is mentioned. One other father-son pair are in the inscription. Javuka and his father Sadvaka are both mentioned, and it's mentioned that he's the son of that, or he's the father. So we see that relationship. Kingila and Toramana have not, are not mentioned in that way. They're just mentioned. In fact, Kingila is mentioned as now I don't want to say it from my memory, but I think the titles that are attached to them are different. And if you look at their coins, there's no relationship between the two. There's no similarity of style or anything like that. So there's clearly no relationship between the two. So Kingila was certainly not Toramana's father. And so it could well be that Toramana belonged to a completely different tribal group. Anyway, how are we doing on time? I'm sort of droning on, and now I see that I may be running out of time and I still have so much to do. So Dr. Khare, you'll have to
Sir,
break
please
in and tell
continue.
me.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I'm talking about is the Alcon coins. And as I proposed in an earlier paper, we should use the Shoin inscription to help us organize these coins, which nobody has yet done. Because we have these four kings who are ruling more or less simultaneously. They must be in different areas. And therefore, we should try to identify the style, the coins of similar style, and put them into one sequence. And we then can construct four different sequences. Cribb, in looking at the Kidarite silver, had identified possibly 5 mints. And it could well be that the Alcon continued these 5 mints. And, each of these kings, Kingila, Toramana, Mehama, Javuka, could have been in control of one of these mints. And maybe there's a fifth one. And there are lots of coins that I haven't been able to include in any of these four sequences. They could well have come from a fifth or even a sixth mint, I don't know. So Kingila was probably the oldest of these four. He probably started ruling around 450 or something, because some of his coins have this have a style very similar to those very early Alcon coins where the ribbons are attached to the necklace, and you have the elongated head, but the ribbons being attached to the necklace are the key to identify early coins. And this one says Kigi on it. It has the Alcon Tamga. Then you have this kind where you have Kigilo, Shoyo Zouba, which may be a version of the word Yabgu. But this also has the neck ribbons, and it's a coin of Kingila. And then and Kingila has a very long, many different types, seems to be a very long series of coins. So he probably ruled for, a good 50 years or something. We have here Kigulo Alcono with the Tamga. Here we have another Kinkila Alcono, and we have a sort of a solar disc, or a flower if you want, but a solar disc on it. And the ribbons have, you don't see it very well, but the ribbon hangs from this, from the sort of hem of the crown, if you like. So the ribbons are hanging now from there, and they're not attached to the necklaces. And then you have the last of the Kingila issue, where you have a Brahmi legend, Shahi Devashahi Kingila, and you have shoulder crescents, and you have this sort of solar disc. So, if you think of other coins that have the same style, you have the coins of Raja Lakhana, which may have been a kind of a generic Alcon. Lakhana could be Alcon version of that. But you can see the similarity of the style. You have the coins of Udayaditya, which have the same exact style. And here we have the legend Udayaditya. And then you have the coins of one Shahi Javuvla, which is not identified. It has lately become fashionable to call this Javuka, which is, I think, a complete mistake. I think it was Elizabeth Errington who revived this old reading of this legend, saying that it says Jauka on it, which is completely wrong. It was based on a very old reading. I don't think she did a fresh reading. She was quoting some old reading, but it had long since been superseded by better readings. And this is actually the clearest coin I've seen, and it very clearly says Shahi Javuvla. So this has nothing to do with Javuka. And if you actually compare with a coin of Javuka, yes, superficially it looks the same, but to somebody who knows what they're doing, these have no similarity at all. They're not from the same mint. Okay, they're totally different. So this is not Javuka, but we don't know who it is. But he belongs to the Kingila series, not the Javuka series. The Javuka series has completely different style. And again, at a superficial level, it seems the same. But, when you work with the coins, you realize on all the subtleties of the differences in style. And this is clearly a very different style. So you have the Shahi Javuka, Shahi Jauka. You have the horse rider coin of his, probably inspired by the horseman coins of the Guptas. And then you have, coins with a conch, coins with probably what is meant to be a thunderbolt. And then you have coins in which the legends are in Bactrian and say Zaboko. So my suspicion is that Javuka, probably his name started with a Z, but in Brahmi we don't have a Z. So they substituted the consonant J. We see this in the Kshatrap series where the king Damjad is called Damjad, Damjadashri. Damjadashri is really Damjad. And so the same thing is probably going on here, where we have Zaboko is just a different version of Javuka. And so there's a bunch of different coins. And you notice how the nose becomes very flattened. And this becomes a marker for this series. So you have the horse rider coins with the Zaboko legend as well. You can see that here's the letter Z in Bactrian, Z, and there's the B, Zaboko. And so I like to think of Aduman as belonging to this same series with the flattened nose, and also Triloka and Purvaditya. So you have a bunch of kings who seem to belong to this series. And then you have the Mehama series, coins naming Shahi Mehama. And he has, interestingly, what I call a fine style and a crude style version. And his initial coins have a fire altar in the right. They do have the Alkon Tamga here in the left. And you have the neck ribbons indicating that this might have also been a fairly early ruler. You then have a transition coin, which is, by the way, Vonderweg actually assigns the coins I just showed you as late, but I think they are early. And the proof of the pudding is this coin, this transition coin that happens to be in my collection, in which you can see, if we go back for a second, you can see that the Alkon Tamga was on the left, and there was a fire altar on the right. If you look at this, what I'm calling the transition coin, you see the neck ribbons. So it's based on an early die, but the Alkon Tamga that used to be here has been obliterated. You can see the die has been disturbed, right? And the area here has been obliterated. So the fire altar has been removed. And then the new Tamga has been carved there. So this was a transition coin. And then we see the late coins where the Tamga is on the right, there's no fire altar. The legend says Shahi Mehama. And now the ribbons have now come to the crown. So these sort of parallel the Kingila coin. So Mehama may also have had a fairly long reign and started fairly early. We have a post-Mehama series where the legends simply say Alkono, And again, we have a fine style and a crude style. Here we have the tamgas back in the left, and we have these solar discs in the right field. And why I think these are late is because the ribbons are attached to the crown, not the necklace. So they seem to be late. But with legends in Bactrian, I'm wondering were these minted in Bactria, because after all, Mehama has those gold coins in the Bactrian style, the Kushana-Sasanian. You know, they're the sort of progeny of the Kushana-Sasanian style. So I suspect that there's a possibility these were minted fairly far north. And then you have Toramana. You may have seen these coins, you may not have, but we now finally have, I know of only 3 examples of Gandharan style silver coins of Toramana. They say Jaya in Brahmi letters, Jaya Shahi Tora. And it's not clear if this letter is meant to be a ta, which could make it Jayatu Shahi Tora. There is an Alkon Tamga here. So there's an ambiguity about Toramana's tribal affinity. Maybe his father was one and mother was one. You know, I mean, it could have been an intermarriage. So he may have had an Alkon connection, or he could just be putting this there because that's a politic thing to do when you're minting in Gandhara. What's very interesting is that he has the image of 2 feet, whether these are meant to be Buddha's feet. Toramana, after all, was involved in the Shoin inscription where he's donating for the construction of a Buddhist monastery, I think it was. But on the other hand, he had an inscription to Vishnu in Iran. Could this be a Vishnu Pada? We don't know. But this is a very interesting coin because we finally have a Gandharan style coin of Toramana. Notice that the crown has a particular style, and we have this legend that sort of circumvents the head. And as we go on, he issued these silver coins in Gupta style. He issued copper coins in a Gupta style. But if we go on to the Toramana, other coins in the Toramani series, we have the coins of Mihirakula, which also say Jayatu Mihirakula, with a legend that goes uninterrupted over the head. And this is sort of a hallmark. It's sort of a similar crown and the legend that goes uninterrupted over the head, prefaced with the word Jayatu. And here we have Bazara, Bazira, whatever, Jayatu Bazara. Another coin of Bazara, and then here we have Jayatu Bharana. So we have a bunch of different coins that, and we have these solar discs. Or if you think of them as florets, you can think of them as florets. I think of them as solar discs. And then we have this enigmatic coin. It says Shahi Vaishravana. And whether this belongs to the same series, I don't know. But it does have this property of the legend going all the way over the head. So coming to Toramana's history, now we had all of these places that I've talked about, and then we have all these places in the heart of India, because we now know, let me skip this. Well, yeah, let me skip this. I mean, just to say that there are literary sources that many scholars discount that indicate that a Huna king, invaded, well, Gauda, but maybe the Gupta Empire, and defeated them, installed a boy as king in Nandanagar, and then retired to Varanasi, where he died. So Jaiswal has interpreted this as being Toramana, and that his son Graha was Mihirakula. And Xuanzang reports that Baladitya refused to pay tribute to Mihirakula, and that led Mihirakula to invade his kingdom. The fact that he refused to pay tribute would be explained by this legend from the Manjushri Mulakulpa, which says that he had installed this puppet king and had then, presumably set up a tribute system and then had retired. The Huns did this repeatedly. Most scholars have discounted this, but we now have numismatic support for this history because we have coins of Toramana. Let me forget about this, but we have the coins of the so-called Prakashaditya, which we now know are Toramana. And just for the sake of those who are not familiar, I thought I'd just reproduce the one coin in which I've read the legend of Anipati Toramana Vijitya Vasudham Divam Jayati. We can see the whole legend now, and that identifies the Prakashaditya coins as those of Toramana. And these were probably minted in the Varanasi area. We also have archer type coins, Gupta style archer type coins, in which the legend says Sri Prakash. Presumably this is also Toramana. And then we have these coins where there's no name under the arm and the legend is just Sri Vikrama. But I've argued that these are also Hun issues. So the Huns were issuing Gupta style coins in the Varanasi area because all of these coins are found in eastern UP or further east. And so that supports the idea that Toramana went deeply into the Gupta lands and he may have actually died there. Okay, I'm almost done. Just one last thing about Sindh. We have now seen this coin of Mihirakula that probably came from either Sindh or southern Punjab. It has a fabric similar to coins that we see in Sindh, although not exactly. So it doesn't fit exactly with the Sindh coin. But then there are these coins that are produced in Sindh, where we have the Sasanian style portrait, and then a Sasanian style reverse where there's a fire altar. And in place of the usual attendants, we have these sort of devices with, I don't know whether they're birds or what, but then sometimes there are the attendants. Okay, so, and then we have the word Shri in the right field on the obverse, the word Shri. And Joe Cribb has suggested that these coins are Hun issues. If we continue the series, we see that this is sort of a sequence of coins that imitate the coins of Sasanian emperors. So this one imitates Shapur II, this one imitates Ardashir II, this one imitates Shapur III, this one imitates Yazdegerd, and then the next one imitates Vaharan V, and finally there's one that imitates the coins of the Sasanian emperor Peroz. Now this one has clearly a Hunnic style tamga. And then we have coins that say Ranaditya on them, Ranaditya Bodha, Ranaditya Satya. And these have the solar disk that we had seen on the coins of Toramana. We also saw these on the coins of Kingila. So these are very plausibly, the Peroz and Ranaditya coins are very plausibly Hun coins. What about the earlier ones with the Shri? Joe Cribb has suggested that these are all Hunnic coins. And And my reaction to this is that everywhere they went, the Huns imitated the existing coinage. They really didn't do anything dramatically new anywhere, except once they had started imitating the coinage, then they modified it and so on and so forth. They didn't do anything dramatically different from the beginning, from the get-go. And so to me, it seems implausible that they would be in Sindh issuing coins out of the blue that imitate Sasanian coins that are issued in the Sasanian Empire. To me, it would make sense that these are Hun coins only if there were Sasanian coins that were being minted there and that they then imitated. And the candidates I suggest are there are these coins that have the similar fabric and similar weight and so on, weight standard and so on, but they don't have the name Shri on them, the word Shri on them. Now, unfortunately for my theory, these last not just in Shapur II, but in Ardashir II and in Shapur III. So I'm going to go back for a second, and I'm going to suggest that, okay, maybe it's possible. Is it possible that the Sasanians were issuing coins without the word Shri, and that the Huns then started issuing coins in imitation of them with the word Shri? Might these have been made in different mints? And I'm really speculating here. I'm working actively on this area right now. I don't have all the answers, but I have a theory. The theory is the following. Most of these Sindh coins, reputedly, and again, this is not based on excavation data, they reputedly come from one of two places, Larkana and Badin. Both places in Sindh, Larkana and Badin. Now, Larkana, we know of one hoard that was published by Senior, and all of the coins in that hoard had the Shri on them. We don't have any, or at least I don't have any information right now. I'm going to be hunting on the fine spots of other coins and of the coins that don't have the Shri on them. But what if the Sasanians ruled this area, were issuing coins, and then the Huns come in from the north and the Sasanians withdraw towards the south and continue minting in Badin for a period through the reign of Shapur III, by which time they get eliminated completely. And then the Huns take over, and now maybe they issue from both places. So again, this is just a working hypothesis and throwing out an idea. I don't know. I'll be working over the next few months on trying to figure this out. But this is an area in which, as I said, I'm actually actively working along with my colleagues, Nikolaus Schindel and Mikhail Alram. So with that, I come to my last concluding slide, which is that if you kind of think about it, you discover that there's a very large area where the Huns had apparently quite a serious impact. We've looked at northern Afghanistan. I've mentioned southern Afghanistan in passing. We've mentioned Gandhara, Punjab. We've talked about I didn't really talk of that much, but that's a story that's well known, Toramana's foray into the Madhya Pradesh area. In fact, I've probably drawn this too conservatively. And then, of course, his foray into Eastern UP, Bihar area, and then Sindh. So the very large area of the Indian subcontinent that the Huns impacted in their historical presence of whatever it was, 250 years. So thanks very much for your attention. I'd like to invite you to send me comments and suggestions and ideas to my email, ptandon@bu.edu. And I thank you very much again for the opportunity for this, to speak to you and to speak about this topic. So thanks very much. And I'm happy to take questions if people have questions or have comments. I'm happy to listen. So don't all speak at once.
Thank you so much, Professor Tandon, for this wonderful lecture. And thank you for sharing your research also with us, which is still going on. There are a couple of questions in the chat box, but then I would also request the participants, if they want to unmute themselves and ask any question, they can also ask like that. But till that point, we can take this question by Mr. Bhushan.
Yes, I see it. I see it. So there's a question, where do we put in the chronology, the copper coins from Ropar and Sangol with the legend Shruta? Yes, I don't know the answer to that question. It's obviously somewhere in there, but whether it's before or so we know of other coppers, particularly the Toramana, Meherukula coppers. My feeling is they probably came earlier, but that's really off the top of my head. I haven't really thought too much about that. Okay, then there's another question. Can you touch base on coins with legend Shahi Jara, found from Kashmir Valley? Again, I don't have an opinion on that. That's not something I have studied. But it's very difficult to get a chronological markers for these things, unless you do a very detailed study of, I didn't actually mention this, and I had intended to, that one of the goals of my talk was also to indicate how coin style and designs evolve over time, and how they tend to start in one place, and then there are small changes made, and they accumulate over time into big changes, but the changes tend to be of the small variety. And so that's what you would have to do. I haven't done it for the coins of Shruta or Shahi Jara. So maybe that's something for you to do, Bhushan. You look at all the copper coins you can find, all the different images, and see if you can see a sequence, and then send me your ruminations on that. That'll be something you could do.
Definitely, sir. I'll put in my best, and we'll get back to you on your email.
Okay, great.
Thank
So can I ask you a question?
Certainly, Amit.
Yeah, hi. Thanks firstly for a lovely lecture which you have given. I just need to understand the minting technique which is used by these silver and gold coins. I mean, it's not exactly reproduce technique, but I mean, the punch of the obverse is very clearly seen on the reverse of those coins, and the remnants of the fire altar which is used again are very vaguely seen. So what exactly was the technique which the silver coins they minted, and even the gold coins for that matter?
Yeah, again, I haven't thought so much about that, but it seems to me that if you use the standard technique of, you have a reverse die and an obverse die, and you hammer them together, when the flan is so thin, you're going to get some transfer from one to the other. Maybe to get the kind of results we see, especially on the silver coins, they actually did it one at a time. And I'm just sort of thinking out aloud that they hit the reverse first, then they turned it over, and then they hit the obverse, they hammered the obverse. And that's why the reverse gets obliterated. So maybe they weren't doing those with the reverse and obverse at the same time, on one anvil, but one by one, maybe. What do you think?
So another question would be coins, the gold coins of Aldomano. I mean,
we see a couple of different types on the rivers. So at times we can see a Lord Shiva with Nandi very vaguely on the rivers, and at times we can see a Ardaksha kind of a deity seated. So what exactly was their motive, and are these two types different, or they are subtypes, or
Can you send me images of the ones with Ardaksha?
Yes, I will certainly, because we can
I'm not familiar with it, but my first reaction is, could this be a misreading of what was on the reverse?
okay, because we clearly see a deity seated with a kind of
Okay.
a cornucopia, and it's on some of the coins it's quite clear that we can reconstruct it as a Ardaksha more than a standing Lord
Okay.
Shiva Nandi.
Well, in that case, that's that's a second type. Yeah, why not?
Okay, so just
After all, there was an Ardaksha on the reverse of the Punjab coins, right? So
yeah, very true. So just another question. I'm sorry, I'm bombarding you with lots of questions
that's okay.
at one go, but this is the opportunity to ask you all these burning questions which I've been holding for a very long time.
Okay.
So the coins which you have tagged under Taxila, the Salona Virya, and the coins of another ruler,
Vishwama,
Vishwama,
right.
and there was another
Kritavirya.
Kritavirya. So, as per preliminary understanding of the fine spots of these coins, they have all been found from parts of Uttar Pradesh more than parts of Taxila. So, I'm quite. I just need to understand if the fine spot actually matters, because I don't think any of those have been found directly from Taxila region, but present day Uttar Pradesh.
Well, that is very good information. And again, please send it to me, because I'm just going by, I think Crib sort of tentatively assigned it to Taxila. But I think, I mean, as we know from John Dale's work on the Pratap coins, looking at the fine spots is very, very good, a good way to go. And that definitely tells us something about certainly the areas of circulation, and probably therefore something about where they were minted. So if they were found in Uttar Pradesh, I would suspect they were probably minted maybe in Mathura. After all, there was a Kushan mint in Mathura. So that would be the logical conclusion. It makes perfect sense to me. I'm not bound to thinking of them as Taxila at all.
Okay. So just the last question. Are there any overstrikes known, because there was constant conflict between Huns and the later Gupta rulers, and it has been very well documented. So are there any overstrikes known on either of the two coins?
I don't know of any. Again, that would be quite interesting to see if there's some around. The Huns just made coins in the Gupta style, but they did their own thing. And maybe they melted coins down and recast them rather than overstriking them. I don't know of any overstrikes. Sanjeev, Sanjeev Kumar is on here. Do you know of any overstrikes?
I'm sorry, I was taking care of something.
So the question is, do we know of any Hun overstrikes of Gupta coins or Gupta overstrikes of Hun coins? Something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, well, I'll keep an eye on and go through the database. I think to address Amit's question, I think and including a lot of the coins that you were showing on your slides, sometimes we really have to be careful there's a fine line between, are we assigning it to a new king, or is this in fact a forgery? Not today forgery, but maybe a copy from that time that was maybe made. If for example, as you know, for the XRF studies, if something was struck at 75% gold and somebody else made a copy of it at 70% gold to make the 5% difference profit, we don't know if these are truly subtypes being created in a local area or somebody else making it just to profit off in a copy. So As far as overstrikes, it's a good question. I mean, I'll definitely
Yeah.
look at it. I'm sorry, I've been distracted. My mother
Yeah,
passed
no,
away
no.
Sunday, and
I
I've
just thought
been very
since you're
busy with few things.
since you're the probably the person most knowledgeable about Gupta coins, that you might have
Thank
come
you.
across some. But I haven't come across any, Amit. So that's actually an interesting thing that we don't see that, because elsewhere the Huns did frequently countermark other other coins, older coins, but they don't seem to have done that with the Guptas.
So just another last question. I was,
Miss Ghosh had to make a comment on it. Can you just hang on for a second?
yeah, sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, if he can continue, I can ask later.
Okay.
Just a last question. There are two Tormanas known. There's Tormana first and Tormana
Mhm.
second. So
Right.
are they both connected in any way possible, any bloodline connection, or are they totally different rulers just following I'm copying the name of the person?
Very tricky
I would
question.
assume they're a bloodline connection, don't you? What were you saying, Sanjeev?
It's a tricky question.
Yeah.
Till we find more inscriptions, it's difficult to
Yeah.
conclusively answer what you're saying. But like Pankaj said, it's possible.
They're certainly in the same dynastic succession, right? They're making coins in the same sort of series, right? And they're ruling in the same area. So I think
But
it
we
would be
saw,
logical
kings
to
always take on names of other illustrious great kings before. So, they don't necessarily have to be of the same bloodline to basically try to get this credibility by using a very popular name. Classic example, chapter 4 in the book, Vikramaditya. Everybody was a Vikramaditya in Indian history. Miss Ghosh, you had a question?
Yeah, it's not a question per se. Thank you very much, Professor Tandon, for this fascinating journey on the Huna coins. I'm Suchandra Ghosh. I teach in the Department of History, Hyderabad Central University.
Right, we're co-authors on some edited volume.
Yeah, true. So actually, I'm intrigued by the names as a student of history on the coins. And when I see in your project, are you also working on this aspect of the nomenclature, the names of the rulers? Because there is a sharp difference. Some names are very much from the Central Asian, Bactrian names. And then we have on the same time, the names which are very Indian. For example, Kritavirya, so which has a long Puranic lineage leading to the Yadu group. And so, means how do we deal with this? Is there or Udayaditya or some Aditya name ending? So particularly, I was struck by this name Kritavirya because this whole the persona of Kritavirya in the Puranas relates to the Yadus, and then which shows that perhaps there was an attempt to bring into the Brahmanic fold, or some kind of legitimation or something. So I was just wondering, you have a big project. So I was just wondering whether you have some kind of, I know this is purely on the kind of material that you showed, but I thought that if we could also think about the names and why there were such different kind of names, belonging to having two different kinds of origin or something. So whether a kind of legitimation or getting access to the Indian population when, as your map showed, that the way they entered into the subcontinent. So that was one question which I thought. And secondly, which Amit mentioned about Ardoksha. So I was also wondering that in most of the coins, I found that the reverse deity is Ardoksha. So many of the coins of these rulers. So what could be the possible reason? And the interesting thing that I noticed is that they are modeling this Ardoksha not on the last Kushana coins, on the Kipunaka coins or the Lashanga. So in between the Guptas are there. The Guptas had actually did some kind of mutation to Lakshmi, but they're bringing in the Kushanas because perhaps of the Central Asian brotherlyhood or something, I don't know. So, but my understanding or my thought was that means what went into the choice of Ardoksha, because just because it is prosperity or something, wealth. I don't know when I saw these coins, but I really enjoyed it. It was very fascinating.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's again, I mean, who knows why they selected particular deities, but for the same reason that the Guptas put the goddess Lakshmi on their coins, and to this day in India, especially among business people, the goddess Lakshmi is of such great importance.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so even at that time, they are looking for prosperity. So it would be logical for them to feature a deity who is grants wealth and prosperity. And I think that here the question of how they are modeling on the Kushan is, I think the answer is pretty straightforward. That they saw their lineage as from the Kushans, and so they continued imitating them. Yeah. So that was their tradition, and they continued in the same tradition. As far as the names go, I'm intensely interested in the origin of names, and I'm constantly, for example, Toramana, that name, we don't really know where it comes from or what its origin is. There's a lot of dispute about what the origin of that name is. So certainly they took on these Aditya biruds, right, to seek legitimation and to seek acceptance in the Indian population, presumably. So that's why they adopted, Prakashaditya. Toramana took the name Prakashaditya. So presumably this Udayaditya, one of his coins says Raja Lakhana Udayaditya. So, he's an Alkhon king, probably with a different name, but he's adopted this one. That's a possibility. But, the one dynasty that I've studied in great detail is the Paratha Rajas. And the Paratha Rajas, all of their names are Iranian. You have the Yolamira, Bhagamira, and so on. I remember, but then you have these two Indian names, Arjun and Bhim Arjun. And the question arises, what are they doing in there? Because you have 11, we've identified 11 names, 9 of them are Iranian, and there's these 2 Indian names.
Yes.
And, my theory there was that at some point, one of them had married an Indian woman, and she named the son Arjun, and then the grandson was named Bhim Arjun.
Possible. Yeah.
So, we don't know.
Like we have in Kandahar, this famous Sophitos inscription where the father is Naratos, Narada comes and all. So actually this, in the Iranian borderlands, it was a blend zone. So many things were happening, and it's we do not have this too straightforward culture. We have a blending. So these things.
In fact, you said it so beautifully, because this is what you see in the process of the mixing. And then eventually one or the other will take over, and Indian names have probably absorbed them into what we have. Yeah. So
thank you so much. It was really illuminating. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Anybody else?
Dr. Susmita Basu Muzumdar has some question, I think. Okay. Dr. Basu, can you ask directly? She has written in chat, I think.
Okay. Okay, so the question is, can you please elaborate a little on the erasures of the tamga and shifting of it to the other side of the flan, and also on the erasure of the fire altar on the transition coins? Do you think there's a connection between the use of the solar disk and use of Aditya endings, as both allude to a solar cult? So I don't have any very clear answers in terms of the erasure of one and shifting to the other. Presumably at some point a decision was made to eliminate the fire altar and to replace and to put the tamga in the more prominent position on the right. And we just happen to have a coin where they actually went through the process of erasing it so we can actually see the thing happening. Why that decision was made, I don't know. But certainly in these, remember that the Sasanians were Zoroastrian. So they worshipped fire. And so there's tremendous veneration paid to the sun. And so the use of Aditya endings, the solar discs on the coins, the names like Mihirukula, Mihir referring to Mitra, the sun, solar deity, all of these are part and parcel of the same cultural kind of background, that the sun is very important to these people, and it keeps showing up in various places. So the fire altar was the more explicit Zoroastrian sort of place of worship, if you like, and replacing it with the tamga, in fact, is a way of kind of tamping that down. Maybe in the Indian context, being too much of a fire worshiper was not, they wanted to downplay that a little bit. Maybe that was what was going on there on that particular transition. I don't know, but certainly the sun and the fire were very important to these people. Thank you for your question, though. That's very good questions. It's helping me. Anybody else?
Pankaj sir, I had one question.
Okay.
For the day, from my side at least. Recently, I've come across a coin where a Hunnic coin, though there is not much of legend on it, which has an effigy of Vishnu on it, and which is very similar to the famous Vishnu Nicolo seal in BM. So do we have any other instances where particular Indian deities have been depicted on Hunnic coins? It is a copper coin. I've shared it on Facebook, and I can even email it to you.
Yeah, please do. There are a lot of the Kashmir smust coins. Surely there are lots of Hindu references. And, even on Toramana's coin, there was the 2 feet. And it's not clear to me that those are meant to be the Buddha's feet or Vishnu's feet. We have figures that could be interpreted as Lakshmi on some coins. So I think, I haven't looked at this specifically, but I can think of a few examples, and there are probably more. And I would start by looking in the Kashmir smust. There should be lots of, In fact, Kashmir smust, there are some small copper coins that just have 2 feet on them.
2 feet on them. Yes, that's correct.
Just 2 feet. Yeah. But I look forward to seeing this coin that you're talking about. Please send it to me.
Sure, I will. Thank you. Thank you.
And could you send me the seal you're referring to as well? Send me the link to it or the image of that seal in the BM, because I'm not offhand familiar with what you're talking about.
Sure, I'll send both of them.
Okay, great. By the way, is this Bhushan Kapadia?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, should we call it a day? Anything else? This was great. I had a lot of fun. Enjoyed it thoroughly.
Excellent lecture, Pankaj. Well done.
Thank you.
I think there are no questions now. So I'll request Mrs. Dhanashri Shezwalkar to give the vote of thanks.
First of all, I thank Dr. Pankaj Tandon sir for delivering this wonderful and insightful lecture. Thank you, sir. We look forward to more such scholarly dialogues from you in the future. Then I thank members of Gokhale family for their wholehearted and active support as usual for this series. I thank daughter of Shobhana Gokhale Madam, Dr. Anjali Fadke for funding the event. And obviously, I must thank all the scholars that have gathered here in online mode, like Dr. Devangana Desai ma'am, Dr. Kumud Kanitkar ma'am, Dr. Shailendra Bhandare sir, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar sir, Professor Sushmita Basu Mazumdar ma'am, Professor Suchandra Ghosh ma'am, Dr. P.V. Radhakrishnan sir, Dr. Padmakar Prabhune sir, Dr. Mahesh Kalra sir, and many such scholars who have participated in the scholarly discussion also. That was really a wonderful lecture and wonderful discussion. Also, I thank all those people who have joined from Facebook, because this is our new technology and we are coping up with that. Thank you. I thank all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.